This episode is deeply personal. It's the toughest one that we have done yet. When my guest and I started planning this episode, my first thought was, no one cares. It's a niche topic and it doesn't affect many people. How wrong I was. Let me start with a couple of statistics from the UK. In the UK, 12,000 people a day become a carer. 600 people a day leave work because they are a carer. Right now, go to your office and look around you. I doubt you will see 600 people, and yet 600 people a day are leaving work because they are a carer. One of the first things I had was some preconceived thoughts about what a carer is. I had this picture of somebody later in life who is looking after parents who are progressively becoming frailer. But then I realized it's way more than that. If you're a parent, you are a carer, especially when the nursery calls you and says, little Johnny has been sick. Can you please leave work now and come and collect him? Some parents have children with special needs that need much more full-time care. It could be that you have a partner who is either long-term ill or temporarily ill, or maybe fell off their motorbike and now needs attention for 6 months. It could even be that new pet that's just come into your life, and now you and your partner have something other than your work to focus on. One of the things that I learned is that we are all carers in one way or another. And you are surrounded by carers at work, whether you are a colleague or a manager. My guest today is Kirsten Hurley. She was a senior leader in tech until her life took a change that she couldn't predict. It changed her, her family, and her colleagues, and the way she led. And Kirsten is not the exception. She is just an example. Kirsten is founder and chief empowerment officer of Better Leaders Consulting. She has spent over 20 years leading high-performance teams in fast-moving consultancies. Before starting her own consultancy, she was managing director of ThoughtBot, where she grew revenue fourfold and built high-trust, high-performing teams across Europe, West Asia, and Africa. Today, she spends her time helping high-performing leaders navigate change, pressure, and growth. And many of the skills that she teaches are predicated on her experience as a full-time carer. Kirsten is going to share a deeply personal story, and our aim is that it will help you recognize, support, and get the best out of carers in your workplace. And if you are a carer, or even if you don't yet recognize that you are a carer, how to build the right culture around you. This episode is being released to mark Carers' Rights Day, a moment to recognize carers in the workplace and how you can recognize them, support them, and harness the unique strengths that they bring because they are carers. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to Build Your Edge. Today, I'm super excited to have a lady called Kirsten Hurley on the show. And I think it's going to be quite a personal topic. It's something that might affect you, but you don't realize that it does. And even if it doesn't impact you, it probably impacts a lot of people around you. And Kirsten's going to bring her personal story and she's going to help us understand the issue so that people who are in this position themselves can make the most of themselves. But also if you're around people then you also can help them. So, Kirsten, thank you so much for coming on the show. Welcome.
Thank you.
Let's begin by talking about why you're here. Why did we decide to have this conversation?
So it was a few months ago now. I think you and I met at a networking event, and you asked me what my story was. And I started talking about being a carer for my two brothers who are autistic and the impact that that had had on my career. And at that point, I was 6 months into a huge career pivot, which I think was where we started talking. And you were curious as to why that had happened. And so, yeah, and then we thought, well, I was also sharing with you how I had started to find my voice on this topic as well. And you were like, well, I have a platform, so use your voice on here.
And here we are. And we are doing it at this particular time because there is a national day coming up. Would you like to tell us about that?
Yeah. So it's Carers' Rights Day on the 20th of November every year. I actually only found it last year, and it was the first time I publicly shared my carer identity this time last year. And so, yeah, it seems apt that having done so much learning, thinking about my own experience, talking with other people about it. Yeah, it's the 1 year anniversary of me declaring my status. But also, more importantly, it's actually for carers all over the country to be recognised, particularly for employers to understand what the rights are of carers in their workforce as well.
Great. And you touched on your career there. If you are comfortable to do so, can I take you back to before that moment a year or so ago when your
hmm
career was, flying?
hmm
Tell us a bit more about your career and what you did and what level you were at.
Yeah. For reasons that will probably become obvious as we talk, I have always been fascinated by communication. And they tell you at university, if you're lucky enough to go, choose something you're interested in to study. And so that's what I did. I studied communication, came out not really knowing what I wanted to do, and fell into a career in sales for technology companies. I was very curious about tech. I had never had any education around it. It was always the year below me that had the computer classes and things like that.
Yeah.
So probably showing my age a little bit here. But anyway, nonetheless, I was very curious about this sector. I had good people skills already. I had had a career in hospitality to pay my way through uni. And so, yeah, I fell into this sales career, and it turned out I was pretty good at it. And very much kind of consider myself to be quite a high achiever within the industry as well. I decided early on as well that I preferred consulting because I really enjoyed problem solving, working with super clever people on unusual or hard to solve problems. And building those teams and getting those people together was what I always really enjoyed. And there's about 2 decades of me doing that, selling different types of services to the likes of Goldman Sachs, British Airways, marquee clients in throughout my career. And yeah, it was incredibly satisfying, and even working with on some pretty high profile projects as well with clients like British Business Bank during the pandemic, helping them build all the architecture behind the scenes for the loans that many businesses benefited from. So high profile, high impact stuff, which was incredibly satisfying and enjoyable.
That sounds very hard work. And I would imagine it took up a lot of your time. And then
Mhm.
things changed for you because caring caring took over in a sense. It became much more important in your life. Would you tell us a bit about who you care for and what impact that had on your career?
Sure. So when I was 5 years old, my brothers were born. At first, everything was okay. So they're twins. And then by the time I was 10, it was clear that they had some sort of learning disability. Um, I think they were 9 years old by the time we actually managed to get an official diagnosis for autism. But they were already, unfortunately, not able to be in the regular school system. It was clear that whatever was wrong was going to require very specialist intervention and care and help. So from that point onwards, I guess I was labelled as a carer for them. Obviously, my parents were around, so they were the primary carers. But as a sibling, there were responsibilities that I learned, things I wanted to do for them through love as well. And as I alluded to, my fascination with communication, I think that's where I learned at a very young age advocacy. So I was constantly thinking to myself, oh, what do they need? What could they want? What is their experience in the world? What are they rallying against? What is this meltdown about? What can we do to make things better for them?
And so then you became a carer, which is something which happens, at home, essentially. That's
Mhm,
your home life. You're a carer now for your brothers, but you're also going to work still. So you're now not just a carer at home, but you're a
mhm.
carer in the workplace. What did that feel like? I mean, were you able to share that you were a carer?
Um, so I think important to say that while it was always a part of my identity, while I was younger and my parents were younger, then the demand on me was less. So there was obviously emotional turmoil sometimes, and there were conversations to be had as a
Hmm.
family, but it was quite easy for me to separate that out from work. Um, in a weird way, I've always had this kind of mentality. I have to do my best at everything because I have the opportunities that my brothers don't have in life. And so that fixed me in a mindset of probably high achievement, high standards. And it, like I say, the needs and the demands on me were manageable. We did manage to get them into a special needs education system. And yeah, my parents had the capacity to share the load between them as well, as you would expect. But so I would talk about it with colleagues to go back to your question, but it wasn't something that I really felt an employer needed to worry about for me. And certainly that never occurred to me until a lot later. And actually, the changing point came when I was in a senior leadership role. And so that's something that takes a lot more mental capacity. And I actually also took on that role just as the pandemic hit. So that was a really interesting way to learn your
Oh,
leadership
perfect
style.
storm.
It
Yes.
really was. But at the
Yeah.
same time, in the background, what was happening was my parents had gotten a little bit older. Their capacity was a bit more diminished. And we struggled to find support workers. We're in the middle of that crisis. And my brothers also had their own health complications start to crop up as well. So basically, everything happened at once. And for a time, I could manage. And actually, I will say that I had a lot of support from my employer. I think it took me about 2 years to have a conversation of this is pretty hard. This is what's been going on.
Hmm.
And that was the first time I requested flexible working to be able to separate work and caring better. And that was granted, and that was wonderful. Um, and I thought that that would potentially, I thought it would be sustainable. I thought things would get better, maybe naively. I thought things would calm down if we just got them out, got one of them out of hospital and we sorted out medications, and maybe if my dad's health improved or things like that, that unfortunately never came to pass. And
Hmm.
So it was a Band-Aid, and it was good. And maybe if the cards had fallen a different way, it would have been okay. But unfortunately, things just kept on escalating. Um, and while I did actually have an employer who was curious and continued the conversation, I was so frazzled. My mental capacity in particular was so challenged that I could not find the words to express what I was experiencing, what help I needed. I didn't know what help I needed. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, like it was, everything just came on top eventually.
So here's Kirsten now in a senior leadership position where presumably the expectations of your work were pretty intense. If you're in senior leadership position, they want everything from you, and often that spills into your home life. But at the same time, you've got COVID. You've got, it sounds like your parents maybe less able to join in, and you've got your brothers needing more from you. That's a lot on your shoulders.
Mhm.
What was Kirsten like at work? Were you still able to, bust it and do everything that was expected of you? Or were you maybe contributing less because you simply couldn't do any more?
At first, I could. It was the classic, almost burnout trap of I'll work longer hours. I think I tried everything. I went through like the very stereotypical list. I would get up early and I would exercise in the morning to get myself the endorphins and the energy to get through a day of being switched on. Um, I would drink far too much coffee, which was not good for any anxiety. I would eat sugary foods and things like that. Yeah. And then it was unable to sleep, because unable to switch off because I was thinking about things, and then that turns into doom scrolling and mindlessly watching Netflix, like thinking that this is unwinding, but it's not. It was just staring at a blue light box that was also, not helping me get the rest and relaxation. But then I would prescribe myself regular holidays. I'd be like, I deserve this break. I'll put things in place so that I can get away for a week. But it would never be enough because it wasn't proper rest, and I would still come back and just repeat all the same things all over again. So that worked for a time, and there were different things that I could try, until it didn't work anymore. And what it started, like the classic burnout signs started showing themselves in me disengaging, feeling less sociable. Because I was so tired, I didn't even want to see my friends or talk to them really. I also really noticed my tolerance levels really diminishing, where I would usually approach things with curiosity, any problem, any challenge, empathy first, and all the rest of it. Um, Sometimes I would catch myself being a little bit resentful, and I was like, "Oh, this isn't me anymore." And yeah,
Mm.
so I think that's when I realized. And actually, I think the phrase that really comes to mind is that I started feeling like I was doing everything badly for everyone, whether it was my brothers, whether it
Yeah.
was the team that
Yeah.
needed me to show up for them and show leadership, whether it was my friends. I was being a bad friend. I was canceling plans, things like that. And that was a horrible feeling. And that's when I realized something had to change. Had to basically do an audit of my life and figure out what was going to have to go and what was going to have to change, basically.
And your brothers are not something you can trade, right? So they have to become number one.
No, and this is what I've learned now that I have done more research. I've had the headspace and the mental capacity and the time even to look into this a little bit more, what happened to me. Um, there are 600 people a day who leave their job because they are unable to spin all the plates themselves. And as you say, you're always going to put your loved one first. the person that you are caring for, or in my case, people. And you think, well,
Hmm.
okay, in my case, I thought, well, I've had a good run on the old career. I'll figure out something else. That's the one thing you know when you're a carer, it builds an incredible amount of resilience and resourcefulness, and a weird kind of confidence that, like, I can get through this. I will figure out a way. Um, but I also recognized I don't have the headspace to figure out what's next. And it just needs to stop right now. And I need to concentrate on my brothers. I need to get them to a better place. That's my priority. I need to heal myself, and I'll come back to the career when I can.
Right. So if anyone's watching or listening, they might think this is just Kirsten's story, and it's not really, is it? I mean, it's great that you are able to share, but we are talking because we want to let many more people know about
Mhm.
caring in general. So we're
Right.
going to talk about what it means to be a carer, and your personal story clearly is central to that. But then there are more people in the picture.
Yeah.
There are your colleagues around you who maybe notice something's not right. Maybe they support you. You've got your manager and your bosses, for want of a better word, who again may recognize what's happening, maybe support you, maybe don't. And we want to talk about anybody else who feels that they are a carer
Hmm.
and help them understand how to get through. Like, what are they entitled to? How do they best make, how do they make the best of the situation?
Hmm.
And I'd like to just start with them, if I may, because people may be listening to you and thinking, well, having two autistic brothers and parents who maybe can't contribute anymore is a bit unusual. That's not me. But of course, most of us, well, a lot of people are parents. They've got children. And when nursery says your child's just thrown up, can you come home and look after your child? It's a micro dose of what you're seeing. If you haven't got children, you maybe haven't just a pet, and when Fido is old and needs a lot more care, you become a carer.
Hmm.
And then there are people with parents that maybe start to need more. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because, and this is what I found as you and me were planning this, it's not unique. And actually, a lot more people are carers
Hmm.
than maybe you and me or other people think. And maybe a lot of people don't recognize themselves as carers. And the reason I want to bring this up is because if you are, if you do have this outside of work pull on you, it's going to impact you at work. Can we talk a bit about um, who do we think might be carers? So again, I want to say your story, it's pretty major, but there'll be a lot of people listening who are also carers but don't recognize it. Who do you think might be carers?
Well, I can give you. I've found no better definition than the one on the Carers UK website. It's a wonderful organisation, charity. As I said, it's them that puts on this day every year, and it has different themes. And this one is about knowing your rights at work. And their definition is a carer is a person who, of any age, who provides unpaid care and support to a family member, a friend, even a neighbor, who is disabled, has an illness or a long term condition, or who just needs extra help when they're older. So, to give you so my use case, to use my technology term, is
Back to work again. Here you are.
I
Yeah.
know it's 20 years ingrained in me. But my use case
Yeah.
is not the classic one. And
Hmm.
uh, yeah, so I think that probably didn't help in a weird way for me identifying as a carer, like, especially as a sibling, like people's automatic thing is, well, don't your parents look after them? Well, yeah, they do until they can't
Right.
anymore.
Yeah.
So, but, and also I have always known that this was coming down the pipe for me because, I've known my brothers all my life. And we
Yeah.
started having conversations maybe in my 20s, I suppose, about what would the future look like once mum and dad weren't around anymore, or, less able to help. Um, but ironically, I thought that this was still a little bit further out in the future than it was. And I had done some planning around that as well. And everything just got
Hmm.
accelerated a lot faster than I thought. So I thought I
And
was
then life
reasonably well
happened.
prepared.
Yeah.
Life happened. But the more
Mm.
classic use cases, if anyone is listening to this, looking around their office or looking around them on the tube or on the train or whatever, thinking, um, there's 5.8 million unpaid carers in the UK. And that translates to, in the workforce, 1 in 7 people are classified as a carer. And those classic use cases are someone who is suddenly caring for a parent who has got maybe an early onset dementia, for example. Or
Mhm.
maybe it's
Mhm.
someone whose partner has just been diagnosed with cancer or some life changing condition, or indeed maybe someone they love and care for, as in they love them. They've had a life changing accident, and suddenly that person's at home needing physical support with, things that they were once able to do. And then I think what is increasingly common on the other end of the age spectrum is parents of
Mhm.
children with special educational needs and disabilities as well, which is a huge thing that does impact people who are trying to hold down careers because they've got mortgages to pay or bills to pay. They're raising a family. Often maybe it's just one child or of several who has got this unique situation that they're having to all of a sudden learn to care and look after someone, and no one ever told you this was going to happen. You're not prepared in any way, and suddenly
Mm.
life changes. And work is a huge part of our lives. Let's face it, it's about a third of our existence during our career, the time
Mhm.
that we spend at work. And then we've got time at home, and hopefully a bit of sleep as well at some point. And of course, ultimately, everything is going to catch up with you and all kind of merge into one, and it will affect how you show up. Of course, it will.
One thing that I learned when, yeah, after we had met and we began to think about having this conversation was how many people I know who have confided in me that they have special needs children. And it's far from a unique situation. It's way more common than maybe anybody realizes and thinks. There's lots and lots of caring happening in the workplace. And I think about some of the people that I have met, and quite a lot of them are very strong leaders. So even though they have got lots going on outside, the way they turn up at work, they're probably some of the best leaders I have seen. And I know that when you and me have been speaking, you referenced how it brought out a whole bunch of different skills and capacities inside you because of your circumstances and what you were doing. Can you walk us through that? What changed for you? How did your leadership style change when you're in the workplace?
It's interesting because I think from an early age, I guess what I was describing earlier was that I developed a strong sense of empathy. And that, first of all, probably helped me a lot in my sales career. Understanding when you're working in a consultancy, understanding the client's problem from their point of view tends to go down pretty well when you're
Mhm, mhm.
consulting. And then, but then going into leadership, then I think I had also learned the skill of advocacy. So when you move from being an IC, an individual contributor, into a leadership position, what comes with that is the ability to advocate for everyone who is reporting into you. And I have been doing that
Right.
all of my life for my brothers. So I learned to sit down, look at things objectively, but also from a point of view of like, what is this person's experience right now? And now that I am in a position of power or privilege to be able to try and act on their behalf, then I will do that. I think there's resourcefulness, as well. So making the most of limited resources, budgets, even time, actually.
Right,
Like
yeah.
all of those things are
Yeah.
skills which are very helpful for leaders to be able to do. Um, and then
Prioritization,
adaptability.
I would imagine, comes out very big there.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and
prioritization.
prioritization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then adaptability as well. So we as a family have navigated so much uncertainty, so many unknown waters we have charted, and just building that kind of confidence and resilience and learning to ask the right questions to be able to get answers, focusing in on the key points, what's really going to make a difference, those kind of things. And I think most importantly, a sense of perspective as well. It's quite easy at work to get quite carried away with, like things feeling like the end of the world if we haven't made target this quarter or a client cancels a
Mhm.
contract. But when you've got some really big stuff
Mhm.
going on at home, which is about
Yeah.
the people you care the most, then it kind of does put things into perspective, really. Like, I'm not saying it's just a job necessarily, because it's people's careers are important to them, and my identity was very closely coupled with feeling like I was a successful woman in technology. But nonetheless,
Mhm.
you would still go home and have a totally different experience. Or when I went to go and see my brothers at the weekend, none of that mattered. It all paled into insignificance.
Yeah. Yeah, and people get upset about, answering Slack messages at the weekend, and they think that makes them a better worker somehow, but it y y the most successful people learn how to disconnect and how to have 2 separate lives, don't they? Do you think that, what's really been thrust upon you, do you think that's made you a better leader?
I do. I really do. Because, as I say, when you lead with compassion, actually, because that is just in your DNA, then people trust you. Um, when they see that you do advocate for them in rooms that they aren't in, when
Mhm.
you um, take the time to, I don't know, reach out to them individually because you notice that they're not okay. You have read unspoken. You've taken on feedback which hasn't been spoken, but you can see when someone's not okay. All of those things that kind of nurture a team. Definitely, I know that that level of care that I brought to a leadership role was appreciated, and I loved doing it as well. There aren't
Mhm.
There's still a huge imbalance in the tech industry between women and men, and to be able to get to where I got to, being a managing director of a team of 30 people across Europe, Middle East, Africa, there was huge opportunity for me to have an impact in a positive way and create great opportunities for my team, to do some awesome work. And I loved being in a position to be able to do that.
And it sounds like what you were, um, having to manage outside of work has really, amplified that in you.
Mm.
Um, what do you expect from the people around you at work? You have been open and said that you talked openly about it at work, and you shared what you were going with so people could see and support and understand. What do you expect from people around you in work, and how what's the best way of broaching this topic with
Mhm.
people around you, your bosses and your colleagues?
So I think, first of all, from conversations with other people and my own experience potentially, um, in different workplaces, maybe there was a fear in me before that I didn't disclose my carer identity because I worried that people would think I would be less reliable or less committed to my career if if I spoke too much about what was going on behind the scenes. So I think the number one thing is for people not to assume, employers not to assume that carers are going to be a burden, um, because
Hmm.
there are peaks and troughs of carer responsibilities. And so sometimes you're going to need flexible working, maybe, you know, someone needs to go to a lot of hospital appointments or something, so you need flexibility in your work schedule. From my experience and from people I know, those people will go to the ends of the earth to make up the time when they can to make sure that they get the job done. Because when you have the flexibility and the support, it really does um, breed a sense of loyalty in people who feel seen, heard, and understood, and trusted, actually, to be able to do things just with a little bit of understanding. So yeah, that's yeah, basically not viewing us as a burden, but realizing that, it can be a temporary situation or a fluctuating situation, and trusting someone to manage it accordingly. But yeah, I think that's the number one thing I would say to someone who is only just thinking about this now.
And as I touched on earlier on, and I reflected on this myself, you know, people with children, when the nursery calls in and says your child has been sick, or having children generally, or, many more people are in a caring situation than just someone in your
Mm.
specific situation. Let's turn the conversation now, if we can, to the carer themselves.
Mhm.
So imagine that, you're a carer in one form or another, and you want to bring this up at work, and you want to get the support and the right um, circumstances around you. You've left behind a simple guide which has got 8 steps, 8 things that a carer can approach. Some of them are to do with your rights as a carer, because clearly, if you are taking on this huge personal mission at at home, you don't want to be disadvantaged at work. So you need your rights and you need to be protected. But some of it is also coming into the workforce as fully as you can and bringing out the very, very best in yourself. So the document is called What Carers Wish Their Employers Knew and How to Help. Let's go briefly through each one of the points. The first point you say is that caring is often invisible. What does that mean?
Well, as I alluded to, many carers don't talk about what's going on outside of work for fear of judgment or career impact, even. Oh, we're not going to promote Kirsten because she's already got too much on her plate. Even though she's smashing her targets right now, we couldn't possibly give
Yeah.
her any more to do. And like I say, just generally being seen as less committed. So actually, and this goes for many different situations, not just caring, but if employers could create a culture where sharing personal circumstances, whatever they are, feels safe because someone isn't going to get judged
Hmm.
for it and they're not whinging or trying to get out of doing something, um, like that actually is going to be highly beneficial to any workplace, regardless of this being a conversation about being a carer or not. Um, and the way to do that, going back to the example of caring, is normalizing caring by maybe talking about the fact that, oh, Carers' Rights Day, there are some legal things that you're entitled to and you might not know about it. So a lovely message from leadership, people team, whoever, saying, oh, we're going to proactively say, you have the right to request flexible working, and we will do our best to have a conversation as a business if it's possible to be flexible. But we want to encourage you to have that conversation with us. Or you have the right to request up to 1 week's unpaid leave um, from your employer, if and basically so that you don't have to use all of your annual leave, which is your holiday for your own rest and recovery. So yeah, those kind of things, if a company normalizes it. And one thing I tried to do in my leadership role as I started talking about it was I would try to normalize it too. So when I changed my hours, I sent out a message to my team saying, I'm changing my hours because of this. So normalizing talking about it and leading by example, to create psychological safety around it was something that I tried to do as well.
So that sounds twofold here. It sounds like you as a carer understand that you can do these things, but also creating the right supportive environment at work where, for example, your boss doesn't hear your request and think, oh gosh, Kirsten, but
Hmm.
actually understands and creates the right environment where you're supported.
Yeah, yeah. Because if one thing, if you feel safe that you can bring up that you have a challenging situation, then two heads are always better than one at solving the problem. And certainly your manager or your leadership team might have resources that you don't know about, or they may have been thinking, oh, we were going to hire for a particular role. Um, and actually this contributes to the business case of, oh, actually, yeah, we could support Kirsten a lot better if we could hire in this extra role, and
Mm.
then her mental capacity can be focused on this particular thing rather than having to go across too many things, if that makes sense. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
definitely, if someone feels empowered and enabled to have a conversation about something they're struggling with, then you're more likely to solve it the right way to retain them and stop them feeling like I have no choice but to leave because I feel like I'm doing everything badly and I can't see my way through. And I just know that in my sense of pride, I don't want to be here and be a burden.
Hmm.
Like, I guarantee you an employer would rather have a conversation and understand the fullness of the situation and try and solve it with you than lose you.
Yeah. And I imagine also it must be better all around if you do bring it up and you have that conversation rather than in some dramatic, unexpected way they find out. And then suddenly it's like the approach to it is different. If you've brought it up and had a mature conversation, it's completely different to one day, for example, Kirsten's not here because she's had to go and do something. What's going on? Is
Yeah,
that fair?
definitely. Because, yeah, you'd want to, as a responsible employee and team player in a company, no one likes to leave someone in the lurch when an emergency happens. And of
Mm.
course, they do happen sometimes. It's unavoidable, or maybe indeed the first time that this scenario happens where you're plunged into being a carer. That maybe actually thinking about it, an employer, if someone's had time off work because maybe their partner's been in an accident, so they've had a few days off to figure things out, maybe longer or whatever, in their return to work, asking them, oh, okay, so how has life changed for you at home? And, what can we support you with? Has, do you need to come in a little bit later? Do we need to shift your hours because you're helping your partner with their personal care before you can leave for work, or things like that? Uh, that springs to mind anyway.
And the second point that you bring up is that caring responsibilities can change overnight. And I guess what this is saying is that sometimes you can predict because, for example, your parents are getting old, but sometimes something suddenly changes that you cannot expect, and now
Mm.
you're dealing with it.
Yeah, I think I was trying to say that either there can be peaks and troughs of when someone needs more of your support. Take the example of a partner having cancer treatment or something like that. Someone is going through radiotherapy or chemotherapy or something like that. That person is going to want to be more present, and maybe work from home, then to be around and care for a person. And then sometimes, so that the requirement, the need for them to do that is less physically, but then it can be, maybe a prolonged situation of looking after someone, and that can really diminish someone's energy, and capacity to do things.
And of course, I'm also thinking that there's been plenty of times in my career where, it's 5 or 6 and I'm heading out the door and suddenly there's a production incident or something, and actually, can you stay all night?
Uh-huh.
And it can change. What I'm trying to say is it's not just sort of your circumstances which change, but also the company's change. So the
Mhm,
circumstances have changed, which now require you to not go home.
mhm. Oh, yeah, I think it does go both ways, and actually, I think carers, when they have the flexibility, they give it back the other way as well, so I think I shouldn't really admit to this, but, there's plenty of times where I've worked on a proposal or a business plan, or budget at the weekend because that's when I was in the better headspace to do it, and the business needed me to do it at that particular time, or a client needed, the proposal and that kind of stuff, and so, um, like I say, I'm not sure if I should really admit that I wasn't that good at those boundaries, but I think when you've benefited from the
We all do it
flexibility
though, right?
when you benefited from the flexibility personally, then you do.
Yeah, yeah. And I think what I'm hearing is that when you're in the right circumstances where work is supportive and understanding, you have a stronger sense of duty almost, and you feel the obligation to give back.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think it's just about respect and loyalty rather than obligation, I would like to think. Because at the end of the day, you're an employee, you're working for a company, and you get paid a salary, and that's the deal, right? But nonetheless,
Right.
if you feel seen, heard, understood, then you are just naturally going to want to give back and contribute to a culture that where people can be successful and feel themselves.
Perfect. Number 3, carers often carry emotional and mental load. What does that mean?
So, what I was trying to get at here is that a lot of first impressions or basic understanding about being a carer is physically supporting someone. And I've mentioned it, supporting someone with their personal care in the morning, or, physically taking them to the hospital for an appointment. In my brother's case, they need to be supervised around the clock, like they can't cook meals for themselves. So that's all things that you are doing. Um, but it's worry. There's a lot of admin that we do for my brothers. So we're very lucky that we do actually have support workers who look after them fairly well round the clock. But nonetheless, all of the things that we do to fill their days, my dad and I have to find woodworking club, cookery classes that are appropriate for them. Even with one of my brothers, I have a passion for boxing and I shared it with him. And so I managed to find him a boxing coach, but it took 6 months for me to find someone who would take him on,
Hmm.
who felt like they could, give him what he needed. So there's, those are the quite fulfilling things, to be honest. But nonetheless, it's it takes thought. What would they like to do? What are they safe doing? And then the admin time to arrange it. There's more serious things as well. There's things like making sure um, if someone's on the right medication, or noticing if they're a little bit different
Hmm.
because they can't tell you. Then like, oh, okay, well, maybe Alex doesn't seem himself at the moment. When was the last time he reviewed his medication? Or, that kind of stuff. Like, I wonder if something's changed, or and even actually just with their health in general, that kind of thing as well, because they can't say or they can't tell you. And then there's just the general stress of it's very hard not to worry about the future sometimes. We have an ongoing national debate about resources, finite resources. There's not enough money in the social system, all of that stuff. And you think to
Hmm.
yourself, oh gosh, what's going to happen to them? What if I wasn't here? I try to steer myself away from those kind of things because I just think focus on the gratitude that I am, and we make plans for
Hmm.
certain events and what would happen. But nonetheless, it all kind of gets to you sometimes.
Yeah. And I reflected as I was listening to you then, the way you were talking about almost observability of your brothers.
Mm,
It took me back to when you were talking about observability of team members, seeing things which are unspoken,
yeah.
but you have that perception and the ability to look beyond and notice things that maybe a manager or a leader who wasn't a carer maybe wouldn't possess.
hmm I think more typically, I think a lot of people talk about when they become a parent, or even these days, if someone gets their dog and suddenly that's their first
Yeah.
experience of being responsible for
Yep.
another soul and something else's well-being.
Yep.
And that's the time that's quite an epiphany for a lot of people. But yeah, depending on how long you've been caring for someone, you've got this. It's in your DNA almost. It's definitely in mine, but it's something that you learn through that for sure.
Yeah. And we talked about the whole kind of having a pet thing when we were planning, and it at one point it sounded like it was trivializing caring. But you're right. It is now suddenly this, young, free, single person, or maybe it's a couple or whatever, and they've got their flat and they're kind of cool and, you know, have nothing to worry about except themselves and each other.
Mhm,
They then get a cat, and now they've got somebody, they've got something where they cannot just go on holiday. They've got to think about it. They've got to get home. They've got to make sure the cat can eat or whatever.
mhm.
They're carers, right?
Yeah, it's a form of
And
caring for sure.
what about the managers and the leaders in a company? If they observe that somebody is overloaded in some way and they're a little bit concerned, and that person actually is a carer, but they don't know it yet, they haven't had
Mhm.
that conversation. What should that manager do? How should they approach that person and bring it up?
Mm. You just made me think of something actually. One of the things I've learned in the last year is that it takes someone 2 years to identify as a carer. So they think maybe it's because they think it's a temporary situation, maybe it's because they um, aren't comfortable with the terminology or something like that. But yeah, it takes a little while for someone to self-identify. So actually, it would be incredible if a manager would say, "Oh, you know how you've been looking after your mum who had a stroke. You know that that means that you are a carer,
Hmm.
and you have this, you know,
Hmm.
identity which is recognised at work, and we have things that we can do to help." Um, so I think in the very first instance, just gently having encouraging well-being conversations that can be in one-to-ones or leading by example, talking about like, I schedule um, a holiday, like time off work, time away from work. I was going to say holiday, but sometimes we don't use our annual leave to get on a plane and go and lie on a beach. Sometimes we use it to catch up
Hmm.
on
Hmm.
life or just not go to
Yeah.
work for a bit and catch up on sleep or whatever it is. But anyway, scheduling regular breaks, encouraging people in your team, like once a quarter. Have you taken some time off recently? I haven't seen you take any time off for
Hmm.
six
Hmm.
months, and I think it would be advisable. Um, Most companies or a lot of companies have employee assistance programs that might have resources there, either for someone to have like therapy or some sort of like outlet for their own stress and help them come to terms with this situation if it's new for them. But also, actually, what I'm increasingly seeing is some of those platforms actually have like services for getting care support. So support workers
Right.
to come and look after like parents and stuff like that. They have like recommended service providers and things like that. So it's incredible that this is starting to be recognized on that basis. Um, but yeah, like I think really it's making sure that managers ideally are trained in who is a carer, how can I spot them, how can I spot those early signs of fatigue or even burnout starting to happen, and how can I intervene gently. So not making someone feel worse than they already do if they're struggling, but how can I have start a dialogue if just in case someone doesn't feel ready to do it themselves. So do it in a supportive way.
Can I ask you if you, and I was listening to what you were saying there. Do you think that there is a slight stigma about the word carer and what it means?
Yes. Um, there is a lot of debate within the caring community as to I don't think anyone really likes it. Varying reasons for it sounds a bit soft for what the reality of what it's describing. Um, I think there's a little bit of it's of course you care because you would do it anyway because they're your family, friend, loved one, that kind of thing. And so that it somehow minimizes the experience. Just care. Care sounds quite
Mhm,
soft, as I say, or
mhm.
inconsequential, and something that doesn't belong in a workplace conversation.
Number 4 on your list is that caring is not a performance issue. What does that mean?
Um, as I said, I think a lot of carers hide what's going on for them because they worry that people will perceive them as being less ambitious or less capable or less dedicated. So if leaders, managers, employers can avoid assumptions. So no two caring stories are the same as far as I'm aware. The needs are different. Everyone's experience is quite different. So yeah, focusing on the individual's needs and um, yeah, and not assuming that their performance is automatically going to be compromised permanently would be a good thing. And so, for example, focus on the outcomes, the successes of the things that they achieve at work, not visibility or how many hours they've spent at their desk. There is a bit of a tendency sometimes for people to be like, "Oh, that person's not been in for a few days," or How come they've been working from home?" When people make, and I'm not saying everyone has to spill their guts on why they're at home. Like, people should be able to protect their confidentiality of their situation. They shouldn't feel like they have to tell the whole company about it. But if the manager knows and understands and basically says, "Oh well, excellent, Kirsten's been the first person to hit target this quarter," or "this client's really happy because of this amount of time and care and effort that's gone into this particular account," or something like that. Um, Remembering that even if someone's hours, performance, capacity has been compromised by caring, they can still actually deliver.
Yeah, yeah. And then number 5 is flexibility makes a huge difference. And I
Hmm.
assume that means if you are as an employer, if you can provide that level of flexibility, it makes a huge difference to the carer to um, not only perform at work, but actually to take care of what they need to outside of work.
Yeah. So it doesn't always look like time off. That someone that that's not necessarily always what flexibility is, but it's just the autonomy to be able to, maybe it's a late start once a week to get someone to an appointment, or maybe it's a late finish or an early start or something like that. So maybe some people can like get online and bust out a couple of hours of coding or something like that before the person that they are caring for is awake, and then they need to disappear off for an hour or so. But trusting that they can manage a schedule and get things done is important. So I think making sure that someone is able to say, "This is the flexible schedule that I need." Also, understanding that there might need to be flexibility within that because things might happen. So, yeah, but basically, let carers design the schedules or work with them to design a schedule that means that work is sustainable for them.
I would echo this. I'm primarily a parent. I have kids. I do the school runs because I've traveled a lot in my career, and I'm not around. My wife has to do it all, right? So now I'm here, I do the school runs. But what that means is I'm out of bed 3:30, 4, 5, 5:30 at the very latest, and I go and do a couple of hours work before we get them out of bed at 6:45.
Wow.
And although I'm, sort of working for myself and not for a company, I've always done that.
Mm,
And I don't expect anyone to kind of make allowances for me. But if only they knew that that's what I was doing, and the fact that I'm not available for meetings between, I don't know, 7:30 and 9 o'clock,
mhm,
they need to understand that. And actually, sometimes the getting out of bed and doing stuff really early gets missed. And you're right. If you're a carer, of course, it's not a matter of choice. It's not. You need to do this.
mhm. Yeah.
Number 6 on your list is that clear policies matter, but culture matters more. What does that mean?
So we're talking about Carers' Rights Day, and I've already alluded to a couple of rights that employers should know that they should be offering to their teams. But a policy is no good if no one feels safe to use it. So, um, uh, one one thing, review policies for, it sounds really basic, but does it read as basic English that someone can understand? Yes, this is me and I'm entitled to it. Sometimes they sound a bit like they exclude some particular people if they do a particular role or something like that. So making sure that it's universally understood and applicable and accepted. Um, but then also just promoting those policies as well. So I would love it. It would be such a result for me if someone was listening to this podcast and then went back to their workplace and said, we need to have a carers policy. So brilliant. Stick it in the handbook, get it signed off by HR, and then don't talk about it. Don't let anyone know that you've put it in the handbook. So please,
And when
like,
someone tries to
send out.
use it, just knock them back. Yeah.
Yeah, publicize it. Say, all right, okay, we've revised this because we are a culture of continuous improvement, I would like to think. That kind of thing. Like, say, we've revised this particular policy, explain to people what a carer is. Like, say, like a carer may be this, use the definition from the Carers UK website. And then say, we encourage you to have a conversation with your manager if you realize that this is you and talk about how this policy might work for you as well. Um, so yeah, that's my recommendation for that.
Cool. So that's a real call to the employers to recognize it and do something about it. Number 7 is that carers need to be seen and valued.
So this one's quite personal, but I think it probably represents a lot of carers. We often feel like we're constantly holding things together. And that rarely feels acknowledged. So if like managers, leaders can recognize the contributions and make sure that they are saying thank you for going the extra mile because I know that you probably had to make a sacrifice somewhere else or um you know uh that's kind of where I was going with that. And also, if you really value those carers in your company, maybe set up like an ERG for them as well, so an employee resource group. So somewhere where they can share experiences and get support from peers, colleagues and peers as well. So invite their voice into a discussion about well-being and inclusion. That is a wonderful way to recognize that carers are in your workforce. There is something going on that they would benefit from a little bit of recognition and a little bit of extra consideration. Um, and that costs little to nothing to be able to do that, to set that up.
Yeah, and it would almost be self-serving, wouldn't it? People who want to join would form and keep it going, and they would help each other.
Hmm. Yeah. People are passionate about problem solving and supporting each other. And if there's space made for them to be able to do that, like once a month or something like that, to just connect with people having similar experiences, it's helpful.
And number 8, the last one on your list, connection prevents isolation.
Mhm.
What do you mean by that?
So it can feel very lonely. Even though I have said 1 in 7 working people are carers, so people providing unpaid care for loved ones that need it. Then, especially, I don't know, in a large organization or a busy company, everyone's just getting on. Everyone's on this hamster wheel. And it can feel quite
Hmm.
isolating. Like people are having a very different experience. Like people who are talking about, oh, we all went out to the pub last night, and telling stories about things that funny things that have happened and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
maybe the carer missed out on going because they couldn't leave someone at home, or maybe there was a big client offsite, and again that person wasn't able to attend because they couldn't leave someone for that length of time. So creating, as I've mentioned before, those peer networks and ways to include carers, safe spaces for them to connect, share those experiences, and access support, and celebrate their successes. Um, it's really a point about inclusion and remembering that not everyone is having the same experience working, doing their job.
Thank you, Kirsten. So that's your 8 points, and I think it's great because it covers everything from the carer's point of view, from the colleague's point of view, from the manager's point of view, from the career point of view. It's superb. Um, what about you? Well, where's your story go next? So we began by talking about the fact that you had this stellar career. You were a woman leader in business, doing really, really well. Life changed. Suddenly, caring became your priority. What next for Kirsten? Where are you now?
Um, So I wasn't in a position financially to give up work altogether, but nor did I want to. So I had a
Mm,
period where I had a little bit of time out to reassess things. As I said, I needed to do a little bit of a life audit. Um, and actually, I since leaving university, I had worked full time for nearly 25 years, and
mhm.
it was the first time I'd actually ever had a break. So I really took some time, recharge the batteries, but also reflect on what do I want to do? I mentioned I'd fallen into this sales career and worked my way up to a senior leadership role. But it was the first time I actually had the space to think, what did I enjoy? What did I want to do? And I realized that rather than chasing a sales career anymore of like bigger goals, bigger targets, selling more complicated projects, working with a particular profile of client. That box was ticked. And actually, what I really enjoyed the most
Mm.
was building and supporting a team and nurturing them to be their best selves, to achieve their dreams, coaching them to make sure that they were plotting the path that they wanted to walk as well in a way that felt authentic to them. So I basically have done a coaching certification. So I'm one of those millions of coaches that you see on LinkedIn coming through your feed. But nonetheless, I do coaching and training for leadership and salespeople, high performers. So yeah, just helping people get to where they need to be, where they want to be. And however, there is, I guess, an angle on it now coming back to being a carer as well. Having found my voice a year ago and spent a year thinking about the carer experience in the workplace, I am also on a mission through the coaching and training to be able to specifically help carers not get into the situation I found myself in, which is where I felt like I had no choice but to leave. Because everything overwhelmed me and got too much. So yeah, if I can make a dent in some way, and I'm defining what this looks like, but I'm very keen to work with employers to bring in training programs, employee awareness programs, that kind of thing, to reduce that number of those 600 people a day who found themselves in the situation I did as well. If we can stop that from happening so that people can continue with their careers and not have to replot them if they don't want to, then that would be job done for me.
I keep coming back to that number. 600 people a day leave work
Yeah.
because they are carers. They're not people who are carrying on in work and also being a carer. They've got to the point where they've said, I now need to be a full-time carer. And
Yeah.
if people who are watching or listening this look around the office, they probably can't even see 600 people. So there's
Exactly.
an enormous amount of people who are, impacted by this and have to give up work. It's
Yeah.
insane.
And that doesn't even actually account for the people who have not gone for a promotion because they already are at capacity potentially, or people who have reduced their working hours to part-time, not necessarily adjusted their existing hours with a flexible working schedule, but actually gone down to part-time to try and fit everything in. So those people aren't even included in that 600 a day. That's just people who have literally gotten to breaking point with it and don't know what else to do.
Where do people go next when they want help? First of all, can people reach out and talk to you?
Absolutely. Yes, please. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I talk a lot about caring. So Kirsten Hurley. And I
Mhm.
also have set up a company, which I am in the process of evolving what all of those propositions look like. But obviously, I've described my work. And I have an Instagram handle for that, which is at Better Leaders Consulting. So you can find me there and talk to me there. I would also recommend um, the Carers UK website as well. When I found that after I had left, then
Yeah.
yeah, they have so many resources, particularly very practical things that cover the wealth of different carer stories that there are, and they have all the resources around things like legal rights and all of that kind of stuff. Lots of resources there. So their website is carersuk.org as well. So strong
We'll put a
recommend.
link to that in all of the descriptions. Yeah.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
and also listening to you there, it strikes me that you as a coach, we're talking about you being a carer and the impact it's had on you. But what I'm also hearing is how much it has changed you and brought out in you the ability to be a better leader. And
Mm.
even if we put aside all of the caring stuff and just think about leadership, your ability to coach people to be better leaders, predicated on everything that you're dealing with, must have a huge difference on people that you coach.
Yeah. It's funny because I think leaders are quite often accused of not being empathetic or not understanding the people who are working for them and stuff like that. And so they'll get feedback in 360 reviews of those soft skills lacking sometimes. And it's quite classic for a very
Hmm.
task
Hmm.
orientated manager and someone who is very successful as an individual contributor to be promoted because they want them to lead by example. But those soft skills of leadership, taking people on a journey, motivating people, helping them understand what is required and why the bigger picture matters, all of that kind of stuff doesn't just magically appear in someone's
Yeah.
skill set. And as a coach, I often I liken it to somewhat like, when you go to the hairdressers and someone holds up a mirror behind you
No.
and you see what it looks. Sorry, Jeremy. Well, it's very insensitive of me, wasn't it?
I used to,
I was about to
but
say, if
not
you can
anymore.
remember what that experience was when the barber holds up the mirror
Yeah.
behind and you can see that you've had the short back and
Yeah.
sides or whatever it was. Maybe it was a mullet, who knows?
Yeah.
Um, But yeah,
Yeah.
like you can basically point out the blind spots and help someone, first of all, understand what that is, and then build their own tool set for how they approach it. Because you can teach certain things in leadership, and I do training courses. I do facilitate learning in that way. But my favorite thing is for someone to basically me to be their thinking partner of um, how does this, how does this affect my team from a point of view of the culture of our company, the type of business that we operate in, because, for example, financial services is vastly different to the pressures of running a retail business or something like that. So context is really important for the type of leadership that's required. And no one knows their business
Yeah.
better than they do. But the thing I can help them do is develop those kind of guardrails or parameters for expectations of what their good leadership looks like and what their company needs from them.
Fabulous. And of course, they can download your guide. I think it's a really useful primer. It's got some real fundamental points about how to bring yourself to work as a carer and how to deal with things and how to build the right environment. So, Kirsten, I want to thank you. This has probably been the most difficult episode to think about, to prepare, and to do because it's a very sensitive topic.
Mm.
And I'm so happy with the way that you've been able to share your story and that we've been able to bring it out. But what I've learned is, your personal story is just your personal story. I have learned so much about the presence of caring, about how many people are carers. And again, I don't want to overdo this, but you can trivialize it and say someone who's now got a cat is a carer, all the way up to, um, your circumstances where you have twins who just depend on you.
Mhm.
Um, but what I've also learned is that caring is a deeply human trait. We all do it, and to a degree, you are doing so much caring that it's spilled over into your working environment. But there's an awful lot of people, as I've mentioned, I know several people who have children with special needs, for example, and I know by talking to them over the last several years, it sits even if you don't bring it to work, it sits in your head and you're
Yeah.
thinking all of the time and you're making arrangements. So I really want to thank you for the conversation that we have had. We've spoken several times, much more, I think, than most guests. We've spoken about what we're going to talk about. And I really hope that anybody who is listening, who either recognizes now that they are a carer, feels strengthened and emboldened and knows what to do. I also hope that if you're, if you're somebody at work and you look around and you recognize that someone is maybe something's going on and you've got a bit of intuition, that you know now how to approach that person, how to help them and support them. But also if you're a manager or a leader, to do the same, to recognize and to help that individual, but also how to create the right environment and the right culture at work where actually that person feels recognized, valued, and supported as you described, but also valued and has offered that flexibility. Because I've also learned from you enormously how much your caring experience has changed you as a leader and how it brings out the best in you as a leader.
Mm.
And you're now helping other leaders do the same. So thank you so much indeed for the time you spent with me today.
Oh, well, thank you. And sorry for, well, no, thank you for your patience. I'll just say that. And I shan't apologize. But I do really appreciate that you took the time to listen and understand. And you asked me some really challenging questions while we were preparing for this, which actually made me sit here and think, actually. I think when we first met, you saw a person who was passionate about a cause and was trying to talk about it. And I'm still trying to talk about it. And I'm still learning. And I don't think I'll ever stop learning. But I will What I do know is that I want to advocate for people who have not yet figured out the things that I have now figured out over the past year. And if that is helpful to both the people who are having the carer experience or indeed employers who don't know what to do about it, and that contributes to their business success or stability, then either way, it's a win.
Thank you so much indeed. Well, I wish you well with your journey with your brothers and
Thank you.
with your business. And I'm sure that we will stay in touch. And if you're watching or if you're listening, there's so much available to you. It's Carers Rights Day, 2 days after we put this episode out, which is the 20th of November. So that's Carers Rights Day. Please reach out to Kirsten. You'll find her on LinkedIn. We'll put all of her details below. Please download her document, and I wish you all well. Thank you very much indeed for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.